Recording. And we are live. Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday to you. Good morning, Caitlin.
Good morning, Jeff. I'm currently looking at our Twitter feed right now. It's not coming up as a live video.
Let's test it. Let's see.
Oh, now it is. Okay, good.
All right, we're live.
Sure that we're
There's
good.
a delay.
We're actually live.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the
good morning.
Welcome to the live show. Go to patreon.com/RINOpod. Only $1 a month for the best political commentary of Massachusetts and nationwide. So let's get started with an update on our good friend, the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu. As we said last week, she was going to lose the battle with the North End and the restaurants there. And consequently, she has, lost that battle. She's walked back and kind of chipped away at the $7,500 fee that all the North End restaurants, and apparently just the North End restaurants, were going to pay for patio dining and dining into the street, even though there were apparently multiple setups that were very similar to that all across the city, which were not getting the $7,500 fee. She's walked back the fee to maybe $1,500. I hear $3,000. You can apply for a hardship waiver, all of these things. But it boils down to she picked a fight that she never should have picked to begin with, much like all of the things in her very short 4-month tenure, and has resulted in political erosion, political capital erosion, and just general failure as a political leader. We told her last week, put down the activism and start being a politician. You think she listened?
No, she made it worse. With that meeting that they had, and she tried to change the room to block people out that, it's just so deliberate. And then when you come out and say things like, oh, they were harassing my staff and all of this other stuff, we watched the videos. There's protesting, and protesting should be allowed. They're allowed to voice their opinions. They weren't harassing your staff, in my personal opinion.
Her very weak claim was that some of the people that were at City Hall, who were very calmly explaining that they changed the meeting to a smaller room on purpose, which she did. Some of those people are protesting in front of her house, and therefore she could not let them in. I mean, this is a really bad look. So she fails there. I mean, that video was got hundreds of thousands of views locally. So
yeah, and I feel like a lot of Democrats or libs, from what I was looking at from it, were kind of not happy. And that's the measure, right? Jeff, you and I are conservative, we're Republicans. Us not being happy in Massachusetts is all the time thing with politics. So we kind of
yeah.
And so, I mean, when the libs are mad at another progressive lib, then that's the trouble, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they were mad, they were pissed, and I think that they showed that on. I mean, she checks Twitter. Let's not pretend that she doesn't make decisions or act based on
she gets on top of the replies, she's in it, which fine. It's fine if you want to do that and you're a politician.
I mean, but it's a very AOC form of being a politician, because AOC gets on Instagram Live all the time and talks to people and talks to her followers and all this other stuff. Michelle Wu does that with Twitter. So yeah, she lost this. I mean, it was a PR disaster.
It is, and it's PR disaster after PR disaster, where it's just she has bad advisors around her, and who are also dyed-in-the-wool progressives, and probably just tell her yes, or definitely don't tell her no. Don't do this. Just flat out.
And that's one of the things I think that we need to point out. 2018 was a huge progressive wave year for Democrats, right? Across the country. And we've made the point here that Massachusetts is always behind on political trends. And so when Michelle Wu came in, she came in because Back Bay and Beacon Hill voted for her. in overwhelming numbers to be mayor. And so she thinks that she has this large mandate to lay down a lot of progressive opinions and stuff. And I think that people don't understand that coming out of this like pandemic and also with like high inflation, high gas costs, people are angry and they're going to be angry at you and your progressivism. It doesn't work in the real world when the real world comes knocking and a lot of bad things are happening. And so yes, she needs to be a politician right now. She should have never tried to put a $7,500 like fine on these North End restaurants. She should have not doubled down on it at all.
No, the double down,
down on it, and then try to push people out of going to City Hall and like actually voicing their opinions. That's not okay. And so I'm not surprised at what the reaction was towards her.
Government bureaucracy is incompetent and inefficient. I could totally see how like $7,500 for just the North End, because some residents complained, her supporters there in that neighborhood complained, and sort of she just does it and it gets by and it slips through. As soon as it becomes public and you realize that no other areas in the city are paying it, it's selective enforcement, a whole bunch of other things. You go, oh, okay, hang on. This was an administrative snafu. You walk it back immediately. You get out from under it. You see it ahead of time. But the wrong lesson learned from like Trump, where the media would go after Trump all the time and Trump would double down. But but Trump was sort of, he would be in the direction of being correct. Okay, maybe he probably didn't say it correctly, but he'd be in the direction of being correct. When you double down on being incorrect, because nobody's distorting what you're saying, you're just like, no, well, this is what we're doing, and I believe it, and my supporters told me, and that in their residents in there, and I work for the residents. I work for the residents of Boston.
Right, like,
so you don't work for the businesses, and meanwhile the businesses are why the residents are there.
Right. That's one of the, like, do you not understand basic municipal like governance? Like that's one of the things.
Apparently
like,
not.
I mean, like even in like I'm not going to say that I'm Kim Driscoll's biggest fan in Salem, but like even then, she's not trying to piss off all of the business owners of Salem after we had to build that up. I mean, when I first moved to Salem was not in like a great spot. I mean, and they had to work really hard to put it into a place where like a lot of people come for tourism, but it felt better about the tourism. And so, yeah, like, what are you doing? I mean, like, and trust me, Kim Driscoll completely messed up the year 2020 with Halloween, and Charlie Baker had to step in, and that was complete shit. But at the same time, she's not levying $7,500 on, restaurants in a certain area of state. Like,
and restaurants all over the country have taken a beating. A beating.
A lot of them have closed.
Yeah, if they're still open. Right?
Yeah.
All right, so another L in the column for Michelle Wu. It's been 4 months, and she's 0-4. If we want to tally over all the things, go back to the past episodes if you want to check out where those losses occurred. Next up, Taylor Lorenz, who is I guess a columnist, right? I guess a columnist for New York Times.
She's had me blocked for a very long time on Twitter.
Well, I'm sure I'll be blocked. I'm sure I'll be blocked shortly after this goes out.
So we used to have a mutual. She and I actually
like IRL and IRL mutual for real.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so she does not like this mutual anymore, and so I replied to this mutual, and I was accidentally tagged her on it, and so she was like, I'm blocking you, I guess. And so like
accidentally, did you accidentally tag her, or
I made a comment like this sort of behavior is not like normal or like sane, or like I would never think to do that. Like I guess I'm just like yeah. So you know what I mean?
To review who Taylor Lorenz is, she's I guess social media millennial critic. What would you describe her bailiwick?
She's a social media journalist. Okay. She is a millennial. She's an older millennial. All right. She's older than I am.
Okay. Older than you, younger than me. And she
used to work
became
for-
famous or got notoriety because she dug up old tweets of definitely one person who said and try who their tweet was Windows is gay, right? As meaning like Microsoft Windows, I believe. And pretty innocuous, a lame joke, right? And absolutely ruined this guy for being, homophobic and all the whole nine. Just buried him maliciously.
Yeah.
Like this is like
there's lots of
it's
self-righteousness
yeah,
included in a lot of her journalism.
Yeah,
it's not positive. It's not. Yeah, a lot of it is almost retribution, like
yeah.
for differences in beliefs, or like even minor statements from like 10 years ago that over time probably right now are not like in whatever we would socially accept, but like it wasn't something like so awful that
if cancel culture had an avatar, it would be her face. She's the embodiment of cancel culture. It's like
her picture would be next to it in a urban dictionary.
She viciously goes after people and tries to ruin them. Like this is Gawker style yellow journalism. Just attacks people for not a debate on a legitimate point of view, but twists what they've done in the past and piles on and tries to wreck them. This is truly awful behavior. Okay, if you have a different disagreement with somebody on policy or an opinion, you debate it out like an adult, like a mature human being, and you discuss it. If they're truly awful, you can go up against them, call them every name you want, but there's like another level for something that you take it in bad faith and you go after them and you try to wreck them. That is cancel culture. That she spearheads it.
Yeah,
it is abhorrent behavior.
So if you don't know, she went after Claudia with no job, who was like a famous social media personality, and found out that her mom is kind of a famous Islamophobic person.
Okay.
And these girls lost. It's Claudia and her sister. One of her sisters' name is Margot. I only know this because I kind of follow them on Instagram. I'm not into that stuff like hardcore. I don't listen to their podcast, but I did read this article and I felt bad for them because the fallout from it is that they lost their original podcast because of what Taylor Lorenz did. But on the tail end of that, they got another bigger podcast on the tail end of that, because what they put out is good and funny. So they didn't end up getting defeated. Like they weren't, I guess, completely put down by Taylor Lorenz, but like what Taylor Lorenz, I mean, there was no point into reporting on what this was. I don't think. What she tried to do is put the mom's actions onto these girls, and like, is that the kind of society that we want to live in, where we're like automatically responsible for what family members that are not
this is very important. This concept, because this is what's going on culturally. So we have two clips queued up for today, and actually they tie into each other now that you mentioned
would
it,
she agree that Hakeem Jeffrey should be responsible for what his like extremely anti-Semitic uncle says? The Hakeem Jeffries will probably be the successor to Nancy Pelosi in the House when she decides to retire. But should he be responsible for what his like extremely anti-Semitic uncle says? And the answer is probably no, even though he probably,
if you support it, right? This is a lot of what the left does. The identity politics is you are associated with the group you belong to. Now, maybe it's family, maybe it's skin color, religion. And this is an ancient concept that I'd say Enlightenment values and Christianity have sought to extricate, right, from our society. It's the idea, 3,000 years ago, you were stuck in a caste of where your family was, your parents.
And we still see that culture
across the world,
today,
across the world. Yeah.
Across the world, like in North Korea, we still see it in India, although I think it's a little bit more entrenched culturally in India. Mm-hmm. But in the United States, we shouldn't have that. And so, we want to strive to live in like a liberal society, and a liberal and small L liberalism, because that goes within conservatism, not large L liberalism.
Yeah, classical.
Yeah, because large L liberalism is very destructive. But yeah, I mean, like what Taylor Lorenz does, and the thing about Taylor Lorenz is this week, we can go into this, decided to do a segment on MSNBC where she says that she has post-traumatic stress syndrome from the reaction online to her.
Let's play the
biggest
clip.
Form of irony ever.
Yeah. So here's the clip. We're gonna do this. Let me do this. So we're queuing it up for the folks at home. Let me do so Caitlin can hear it. We'll do that. And Caitlin, I'm not going to share the screen with you, but I'll play the audio.
Right, I've seen it, so I know.
Okay. All right, here we go.
I've had to remove every single social tie. I had severe PTSD from this. I contemplated suicide. It got really bad. You feel like any little piece of information that gets out on you will be used by the worst people on the internet to destroy your life. And it's so isolating.
And terrifying.
It's horrifying. I'm so sorry. It's overwhelming. It's really hard.
Okay. So she's sitting next to somebody that looks like Draco Malfoy from freaking Harry Potter, and it's just like it's so gross. Like she is the epitome of what she just said, taking some small aspect of what somebody said in the past and ruining their lives over it. I mean,
there's no introspection, right, Jeff?
Not an ounce of self-reflection. Not an ounce.
There's no, and that's the thing. Like, if we want to live in a society where apologies matter and people can take nuance and actually laugh at things and all this other stuff and live in a true liberal society, small L liberalism again, we need to be able to not have people like Taylor Lorenz go into people's backgrounds and try to weaponize it. I mean, that's what she's doing. I mean, when she jumped into the DMs of Kellyanne Conway's teen daughter in order to get information to dunk on her mom, that was deplorable. I don't know what else to really say.
Here's the thing. You can say somebody, it's like, at what point is it okay? And I think we're well past this point to say she's an awful person. Like you and I wouldn't think to do things like that. We have a moral center that would say, no, I'm not going to go into the DMs of the teenage daughter of a public figure and try to pull information out of them or get dirt.
Yeah,
I'm not going to do that. That's a line.
Why would you try to stomp down on that? For what journalistic practice would you need?
Because she's an awful person. She's an awful person. And the crocodile tears on that interview and the claiming PTSD. Okay, the people in Ukraine are experiencing PTSD right now. Actual PTSD. For your spoiled. Yes.
And you're talking about PTSD because people are doing the same thing that you do against you. What are you doing?
It's gross.
There needs to be some introspection here. I don't think that and I do, how can I say this? I feel bad for her in the sense that she feels that she needs to do this for money as a job. She's clearly put herself in this corner where she is hired on this basis for her journalistic practice and what she will do. I feel bad for that. What I don't feel bad for is that you're keeping doing this. You have other skills. Just stop. You never contribute positively to the discourse of our country. Never. And you don't understand. You cannot see how negative the impact that you put on journalism. Like, you just don't get it. And you like clearly are playing the victim here. And you need to realize immediately that you don't have to be this person.
I have to disagree with you. I don't feel bad for her one bit. She's a grown up. She's made all these decisions to be this vile. Like, that decision. Like, we've all had these decisions in our lives from the time we're 7 or 8 years old. Like, there's a bad choice in front of you. Do you make it, right? And she's been making these bad choices, and she knows it's wrong. And that's when you know something is wrong. And she acknowledges sort of that it's wrong in the video because she's claiming victimhood for performing the exact same things that she does to other people. So she knows there's some, moral aspect to it that she chooses to ignore in her career. And I don't feel bad for her one bit because, you make that one mistake and you're like, you know what? Or you do it for a few years and you're like, holy shit, what did I do? What did I do? And you completely backtrack. You say what I did was wrong, but this has been too long now. At what point, this is when you it's like, I'm not comparing her to like Vladimir Putin, but at what point do you learn your lesson, like that the person is not acting in good faith? Okay, and I could see how you might approach it, but I have to disagree with you. I don't feel bad for her at all. You put that kind of negativity into the world, you put that type of behavior into the world, you're going to get blowback. And if you want to cry about it when it happens, too bad, so sad. I'm not sympathetic to her at all. At all.
I just think that she's backed herself into a corner here. And so, like, and I think that she's surrounded by a lot of people that like keep on promoting this bad behavior within like these big media, like legacy companies. Yeah. And it's interesting that she like talks about how like the New York Times is so toxic, about how it doesn't protect her from like the online trolls or anything like this. And it's like, you help make that worse. Yeah. Like, so at what point do you as an adult say, I'm going to remove myself from the situation? Like, she doesn't have that impulse, and that's kind of what the problem is.
All right. Well, along those lines, we're going to start the next clip with Andrew Sullivan was on Jon Stewart's new show on Apple TV, which, has the hallmarks of Bill Maher's show.
Apple TV is boring. Like, I don't. Yeah, I guess Ted Lasso is the only show on here that's good.
I've heard some good things. I mean, we can talk about streaming stuff in a minute, but it's like, but watching Jon Stewart evolve over the years has been sort of depressing, and this is really just takes the cake here. So I'm going to. Let's go back to this. You should be able to hear the audio on this, Caitlin. So let's play Jon Stewart. This one goes a couple minutes, and I think we got to play it in its entirety. So bear with us for a little bit here. Maybe I'll cut it short if we get to the point.
I think the conversation is then this. We have an awful history. Its remnants are still felt today.
We also have a great history, John.
Say it again?
We also have a great history.
But I think you're minimizing it. You're suggesting that because
I think by calling today white supremacy, you are minimizing actual white supremacy. We have an incredible diversity. To condemn all American history as racist.
I disagree that you're generalizing all white people. The systems that were racist that were put in place.
Systems.
Yes. The systems that were put in place.
I'd like you to explain exactly what they are.
Well, I thought I explained it earlier about the GI Bill and about the New Deal.
That's one thing. I want to know about these systems.
I just explained it.
Yeah, so I'm going to pause it there. So this is important. So this is a common argument. Yeah, go ahead.
I actually know a little bit of the history here. I think that what he's referring to is redlining, and so, but he doesn't do it in a very articulate way. And I would agree that redlining was a horrific bad practice on the part of the federal government. That was a wrong that needed to be made right. But I'm not sure
where Andrew
New Deal would be considered and generalized as yes.
Okay, so I think that Andrew Sullivan has a good piece on his Substack to check it out. I only got like a third of the way through it because it was just I won't say it's too long. I didn't read it, but I just didn't get to finish the end of it. I was busy. But he gets into that the setup of this episode and him coming on, and where they invited him at the last minute. It was going to be in person. They decided to do by Zoom. He really didn't want to do it that way. Also, I believe the title of the episode was something like "What's the matter with white people?" I'm not lying. I'm not lying. I believe that's what he said. Something close to that effect. But the setup of the clip, right? So he's asking, what systems? And Stewart goes on to name like an example of the GI Bill. So GI Bill was discriminatory back in the 40s and 50s. They go into, redlining, and these are practices, right? So this has come up in the past in other debates, and I wish people who wanted to defend American values were more articulate in knowing this, because I
am articulate in knowing this
because
with redline, okay, I actually can speak to this, okay? So with the GI Bill and redlining and all of that stuff, with segregation and all of this, okay, that came from the massive progressive era that started in the 1900s, going towards probably JFK, actually. Jeff, we can agree segregation was really bad and it was a historical wrong and it needed to be made right. It was made right, okay? And we need to be kind of honest about that, right?
That's an important part. That's important. Okay. It was made right.
The
yeah.
Bill of 1964 corrected a lot of things. We had landmark Supreme Court cases on education. It was not just the VRA of 1964, but also the Civil Rights Act of 1968, which handled segregation housing. And that is the big one, actually. Mm-hmm. People don't talk about that. 1968 was big, okay? If you're going into probably mass incarceration, I can understand maybe that talking point. But I feel like our federal government has actually taken the stance that we're trying to right some wrongs on that.
But this is a good point. This is what I got, and just one sec, because I want to you bring up exactly what I'm talking about here. The system, the bigger system fixed flaws within the system, and what Stewart is pointing to are flaws within the system. But the progressives want to point to the flaws within the system as the system,
and not talk about the solutions that happened over time.
And the system had the mechanisms in itself to fix it. Now, Andrew Sullivan didn't say that in this, and you can say it just like that when you're arguing this point with any progressive. And they really don't have, there's not much of a counter argument, because they'll go to the next system, because you ask them each one, one by one, redlining, GI Bill, all these things. And what happened to them? Does it still exist in 2022? No, it does not, because the system put into place a fix, because that's what it's designed to do.
Yeah. No, I mean, these, and the thing is I think that these people don't understand that in the United States, we've addressed these problems. We did this as a country, and we don't understand how lucky we are, because within the United States, we do address these problems. Yes. Other countries around the world, they don't address these problems. They don't. What they do is they put a Band-Aid on it, trying to say, yes, sorry, blah, blah, blah. Nothing really happens from that. Okay. In Europe is still one of the most racist places in the world. Yeah. In the United States, it's just not the same.
It isn't.
And people
really don't grasp that. People really don't grasp that, how different it is over there. And with Jon Stewart came to real fame in the early 2000s. George Bush was president, the Iraq War, and being honest in his criticism of that. And then something real shifted when Obama got elected, right? Because he still had his show. Social media was just becoming a massive powerhouse. And he went from, smartly criticizing political power with George Bush to defending and protecting Obama and the Democratic Party. And I think he led the way into what we're seeing now, which is protect D's at all cost.
And I think that he understands that he played a part.
Yep. And it's a very dishonest, comedy, any comedy lives in honesty. The reason why Stephen Colbert isn't funny anymore is because
he was funny.
He was funny at a time, but
he made fun of both sides.
Yeah, there needs to be a current of honesty in the joke. And when you're defending Joe Biden and you're still dunking on Trump and it's 2 years later and you can't get past it and you're buying into that the system is racist and you're pointing out examples of flaws in the system, and that's your point. And then you sanctimoniously shit on Andrew Sullivan on your show by talking over him and just basically insinuating and flat out calling him racist for disagreeing with you. There's no honesty in that.
The woman in this clip was like so funny because it was almost a parody. Like I felt like it was it was like watching the movie Get Out. Do you know what I mean? Where like the white people pretend that they're like not racist and then end up being like the super racists in the end.
Yeah.
Like it was kind of funny in that way. Like I was like, is this a parody? And Andrew Sullivan is the normal. Like that's what I
in that circumstance, yes. In that circumstance,
like, and that's what I was getting from that. Like, I was just like, everybody wants to get along. Like, I don't think that people realize that in normal life, like,
so
our interactions are just not this way. And so, like, yeah, like, why were you?
So this show is 10 years too late. It's going to fail, and it'll fail because it's not honest, and there are honest conversations like Joe Rogan is having, and I don't know what they
out the door. To be quite honest, Jeff, I think it's starting to be on its last legs. I mean, like when I watched this, I was like, holy shit! Like, was this out of like 2017? Like what?
Yeah.
What am I
basically?
watching?
Yeah. It is. It's.
And Andrew Sullivan of all people, like, come on, he's a conservative that voted for Obama, was a huge Obama guy, like, you know, like believes in climate change, generally believes in some of the woke stuff, but like you called him a racist of all people. Like, what do you do?
Yeah. Which should be a hallmark of how far to the left all of the glitterati has drifted. And this will fail because it's 10 years too late. It's not honest. It's in a format built to fail because you have to have that honest conversation, and you can't do it the way Stewart's doing it. So, but I'm kind of happy to see it take place because now with social media, we get to comment on it. The world gets to see how breathtakingly bad a segment it was and how built on lies it is. At the touch of their fingertips, which did not take place in 2012, 2013, the way it does now. And too much water under the bridge. So, well, we'll see if there's any useful clips down the road from his Apple show, but I doubt anything good will happen from it. Okay, we're going to wrap up with a little bit of a sensitive topic from where I sit. Ed Lyons, who is a local guy who I used to do a podcast with. Let me say this. When I got into the podcast game now 7 years ago, right? So I was doing a lot of TV, and I couldn't stand TV because it was just bad. It was like, you get to talk for 30 seconds. It's cable news, talking heads. It still goes on CNN, all the shit that actually Jon Stewart used to talk about when he would criticize it. But I was on, TV around here doing that. Wasn't intellectually nutritious. So at the time, Ed Lyons was a smart, left-leaning Republican. And I wanted to start a podcast with a liberal, have a Democrat on, and really talk about issues to which we disagreed. It was very tough to find them, quite honestly. Not a lot of Democrats want to sit down and talk policy, even if it's their love language, right, Ayanna? Okay. But aside from
we
that,
love you, Ayanna. You're invited on.
So I did not agree with Ed on a whole host of issues. So I thought that would be compelling listening. So we started a podcast, and it was reasonably popular for local journos and political types. A lot of people listened. But we'd argue about stuff. Some stuff we'd agree, and we'd have guests on and things like that. And it was pretty good. It was pretty good for the time. Then Donald Trump got elected. Donald Trump broke a lot of people's brains. And you're seeing that out there. Trump derangement syndrome.
Still.
It still exists. And I don't know. I mean, if you want to paint the wide brush, and Ed fell into that category. There was, right after the election, maybe the inauguration, I recorded an episode with him in January of 2017. And I had never edited anything out of an episode, but I had to cut like 20 minutes out because he went on a rant. And I'm like, okay, nothing's happened. He was like, he's a dictator. We're going down the road of fascism. All the stuff you hear from every liberal out there. Okay, so I cut that out. All right, first sign of trouble. Then, we recorded a few more episodes here and there, and it got worse. And then a few months later, we had on Michael Graham, who used to host a radio show on 96.9 in the mid-2000s, had a column with the Boston Herald, popular local figure, conservative, leans right. So we had him on, and in the episode's still on YouTube if you want to go to my YouTube. Ed was just behaved completely poorly. Awful. Disrespectful, nasty, rude, and I was having none of it. And so I told him that after the fact. I was like, you can never act like that away, for any guest. And we had on some pretty prominent guests. We had on Michael Dukakis, Jonathan Gruber. I failed on the audio on that one. That's one of my worst podcast failures. But Biden's deputy campaign manager, Rufus Gifford. Like we had. Oh, actually, that was me. Sorry, never mind. Sorry. But we had on some pretty prominent people locally. Dan Kennedy, professor of journalism. Like good guests. And in order to get good guests, and in order to be considered, serious, you have to treat people respectfully. You can't act in a clownish way. This was a total departure from everything I wanted to do, the way he treated Michael Graham. So at that point, it was basically done. Now, at that point, he would claim that, I thought we were friends and this or that. And I said, man, we can be friends, but if any friend, and I mean this, any friend treated, a guest in your house, a guest on your show, whatever, the way you acted, I would absolutely call them out. That behavior is not acceptable. Okay. Yeah. And that's what good friends would do for other friends, is like call them out on their behavior. So I did, and the show ended. So I did, I went on with the podcast. I kind of did, get interviews and discussions I wanted to have, mostly with liberals that I could get on, and a lot of good content. But over the course of Trump's presidency, Ed started to lash out at all Republicans, saying that they were soulless because they supported him when they voted for him because he was the Republican nominee. Real nasty stuff. The examples are out there. 4 years of that. Just vitriol. It's sort of it's sad to see it. I don't like it. I know somewhere down deep he's a good person, but he's certainly not acting in a good way. Okay, so I don't have a lot of background with Ed, only on Twitter. When we interact on things that do not include politics, he seems like a really nice guy. Mm-hmm. Menial type of things, we talked about swim lessons, because I teach swim lessons. We talked about that and stuff. Seems like a nice normal guy. When it comes to politics, the way that he addresses things is very
exaggerated, high emotional, aggressive, but like aggressive in a mean, nasty way, if you disagree with him. And do we want to like address the elephant in the room?
Go ahead.
He went after Anthony Amore yesterday on Twitter. Commonwealth Magazine put out a pretty good article on Anthony, talking about, you know, post Baker, Massachusetts, post Trump, America Republicanism, and Anthony fits that mold. I think that, you know, we love Anthony here. He used to be with us.
OG RINO podcast. Yep.
You know, he's such a great stand-up guy. And so when I saw Ed's Twitter thread yesterday on Anthony, you know, it kind of made me angry because it was just not true, and it was very dishonest.
Just a flat out lie. Flat out lies. And I tweeted at him, you know, yesterday, and you're right. He is a good person. He's a good man. I can't say that he's not, but he's definitely drifted very far. I mean, because a good person doesn't act the way, like, this is like the Taylor Lorenz aspect we were talking about earlier, right? Because I know Ed, we were friends, but I wouldn't accept that kind of behavior from any friend. You know, say it was just somebody on Facebook that I was friends with, you know, and like went off on people that I knew and acted in this wholly inappropriate way. I would end that friendship, and I had to end that friendship with him. And I'm not going to lie, it hurt, you know, because we were friends.
Yeah, you were friends, and
but,
like that.
But just, you can't behave that way. And he owes Anthony a huge public and private apology. It was disgusting.
I mean, what he said in the thread, we can kind of get into it a little bit. Said that Anthony was a massive like Trumper. We both know that that's not true.
That's not true. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, Anthony supported Trump's second impeachment like wholeheartedly. After what happened in January of 2021.
Yeah. Anthony's wrong on that. Sorry.
It creates a weird precedent. I get that. But basically the thread came down to Anthony had criticized Ed. And because Ed opposes Trump, that was the big thing here. And trying to say that Anthony is a partisan and all this other stuff, it's like no one is not a nonpartisan. Ed is not even a nonpartisan.
Yeah, if you're running for office,
no matter what he even pretends to be. I mean, Anthony has a platform. He has personal opinion pieces, but I have seen him in the real life, talking to voters and talking about what his personal beliefs are, and he disagrees with some people, and so, but he does that in a respectful manner that still gets the person to support what he's doing and potentially get their vote. So like, that's when I was just like, when I was reading that, I was just like, you can feel the anger in Ed's thread about Anthony, and it just seems so, I did notice the author of the Commonwealth Magazine piece at the end of Ed's thread, basically saying, yep, basically saying that, you know, this is an interesting thread because it focuses on how Charlie Baker endorsed Anthony. It's a really big endorsement. That's really awesome of Anthony to get there. You know, Charlie and Anthony are friends and all this other stuff where he's, you know, that Ed is talking about how Anthony and Charlie have diverged on policy, which is not true. But the author of the piece at the end goes, wouldn't it be the fault of Charlie Baker if he made this endorsement and it wasn't a true endorsement of, and like, it wouldn't speak ill of Charlie Baker if he's endorsing someone who's a hardcore pro-Trumper, if Anthony is that, you know, like, and that's one of the things I think that needs to be pushed back on, right? Like, we're, you know, as much as we want to be past Trump, like you and I want to be past Trump, a lot of the country is moving there, and you're either past it or not. Yeah. I mean, I just thought that yesterday's attack on Anthony was just not based in any sort of reality.
It wasn't.
And it was
So
sad.
Ed, you know, Ed, you may watch this. Ed, Ed, you owe Anthony a huge apology. I hope you reach out to him. I hope you say so publicly. I mean, it's just not acceptable to act that way. So anyway, sorry to end on a somber-ish note for this episode, but head on over to the patreon.com/rhinopod. Only $1 a month. If you're a new viewer, we always appreciate this. So you get a little extra content there for maybe 25 cents to 33 cents an episode, right? You know, for $1 a month. And we dive deeper into more of the conservatism bubble and what's going on and what's being discussed on that end. All right. That's it for us. We hope you have a great week, everybody. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.